the unexpected beginning. It was a bright morning in September 2025, and New York City buzzed with the energy of Labor Day, the holiday that filled the city with life. In Manhattan, balconies were adorned with American flags and paper flowers, while stalls at Chelsea Market wafted aromas of hot dogs, bagels, and apple pie. Street musicians played jazz in the squares, and children ran with balloons laughing under the autumn sun. But at Mount Sinai Hospital, an oasis of calm amid the chaos, the outside world faded, replaced by the echo of footsteps on granite floors and the soft hum of medical machines. Alexander Vaughn, 38 years old, adjusted his Italian silk tie as he walked down the modern hallways of the hospital, where stained glass windows projected colorful mosaics on the walls. As president of Vaughn Tech, a company dominating technological innovation across 3 continents, he was accustomed to controlling every detail of his life. But today his heart beat with an unease that no million-dollar contract could soothe. In a few minutes, he would announce a $10 million donation for rare disease research, a gesture the media already called historic. However, for Alexander, it wasn't just philanthropy. 5 years ago, his mother Rosalind had succumbed to a disease so rare that doctors could barely pronounce its name. The image of her decline, the woman who taught him to love sunsets on the Brooklyn Bridge, reduced to a whisper in a hospital bed, still haunted him. He had spent millions on specialists, but received only condolences. "No one should go through that," he murmured, practicing his speech as his assistant Carla handed him the final details. "The press is ready, Mr. Vaughn," she said, adjusting her glasses. "The speech is on your tablet." But Alexander's mind wandered, trapped in the echo of his penthouse on Fifth Avenue, a space of impeccable design with views of the Empire State Building but empty of life. Despite his fortune, every night he returned to a silence that never felt like home. As he walked to the conference room, he thought of Elizabeth Moore, the woman who filled his college days with laughter and colorful canvases. In her small apartment in Greenwich Village, Elizabeth's paintings covered every wall, capturing sunrises in Central Park and sunsets over the Hudson River. But 6 years ago, their farewell had been bitter. She refused to follow him to Silicon Valley, where Vaughn Tech was expanding, and he chose ambition over love. "I can't leave my life here," Elizabeth had said, tears in her eyes. "And you can't leave yours." Alexander wondered if she still painted, if she still believed in eternal love stories. Entering the room, camera flashes blinded him, and journalists settled into their seats. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady despite the emotions bubbling under his Armani suit. "Today, we take a step so no family suffers like mine." But before continuing, something stopped him. Through the glass door in the hallway, he saw 3 identical girls, about 5 years old, standing by the nurse's station. They wore colorful dresses, red, blue, and green, like a living rainbow. Their dark eyes watched him with the uninhibited curiosity of children, and something in them took his breath away. The girl in red crossed her arms, a familiar gesture that sent a shiver through Alexander. It was the same defensive pose Elizabeth used in their arguments at the fine arts school when they talked about a future that never came. The other 2 in blue and green studied him with equal intensity but differently. The blue one tilted her head as if analyzing, while the green one smiled shyly, as if wanting to offer something. Alexander stopped his speech mid-sentence, surprising the journalists. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, stepping into the hallway. "Excuse me," he said to a passing nurse, his voice shakier than expected. "Who are those girls?" The nurse, A woman in her 40s with a warm smile replied, "Oh, the Moore triplets. They're not patients. They're visiting their mother, Elizabeth, in room 412. They've been here every day for a month. A lovely family." The surname, Moore, hit Alexander like thunder. He calculated mentally 5-year-old triplets Elizabeth. Was it possible? His hands trembled as the nurse added, "The mother has systemic lupus, a complicated disease. The little ones are very brave." Alexander returned to the conference, but his words were mechanical. The images of the girls haunted him, the red one's posture, the blue one's curious gaze, the green one's shy smile. After the applause and handshakes, he dismissed his driver and walked alone through the hospital hallways, seeking clarity in the disinfectant-scented air. Something about those girls had dismantled him, not just their appearance, but an inexplicable connection. Passing through the special treatment wing partly funded by his donations, he saw them again sitting on a bench, sharing a grilled cheese sandwich. The red one led dividing the bread with surgical precision, while the others obeyed gratefully. He approached slowly, fearing to scare them. "Hello," he said, crouching to their level. "My name is Alexander. What are you eating?" The red girl looked at him suspiciously. "I'm Charlotte," she said. "This is a sandwich. Mom says we have to share." The blue one, Sophia, added, "It's grilled cheese, but not as good as at home." The green one, Lily, smiled. "Want some?" Alexander shook his head, moved by their generosity. "Thanks, but I've eaten. Are you here visiting someone?" "Our mom," Charlotte said, her tone protective. "She's sick, but she'll be better soon." Sophia, tilting her head, asked, "Why are you here? You don't look sick." Alexander laughed, surprised by her frankness. "I came to help doctors find cures for people like your mom." The Lily with bright eyes said, "That's good. Mom needs a lot of help." Before he could respond, an older woman appeared calling them. "Girls, time to go back to Mom." Charlotte took her sister's hands and the three bid a small goodbye. Alexander stood still, his heart pounding. Moore, Elizabeth, 5-year-old triplets. The possibility that they were his daughters shook him but also filled him with a panic he'd never felt in any boardroom. That night in his penthouse, he barely slept, watching New York City's lights while calculating dates and memories. At dawn, he called his private investigator, his voice firm but urgent. "I need information on Elizabeth Moore, about 35 years old, in New York City. She has 5-year-old triplets. I want everything as soon as possible." The truth revealed. The afternoon sun filtered through the stained glass of Mount Sinai Hospital, casting rainbows along the hallways that Alexander Vaughn walked with heavy steps. It was the Monday after Labor Day, and New York City had resumed its usual rhythm cafes on Fifth Avenue, full of tourists, musicians playing in the subway, and the aroma of burgers escaping from restaurants in Times Square. But for Alexander, the world had stopped since seeing the Moore triplets, Charlotte, Sophia, and Lily. Their names echoed in his mind like a litany, along with the certainty that kept him awake all night. Those girls could be his daughters. The report from his private investigator, John Ramirez, arrived at noon, and each line was a blow to the heart. Elizabeth Moore, 35 years old, had been hospitalized for 6 weeks with systemic lupus, an autoimmune disease that had worsened severely. Her daughters, Charlotte, Sophia, and Lily, were born on March 27, 2022, exactly 5 years and 3 months ago, 9 months after Alexander and Elizabeth's breakup. The math was irrefutable. Elizabeth, a single mother, lived in a modest apartment in Greenwich Village, struggling with medical bills not covered by Social Security. The girls, according to the report, were bright but marked by their mother's illness, spending every afternoon at the hospital. Alexander, sitting in his office, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, felt the weight of 6 years of wrong decisions. He remembered the last night with Elizabeth in her apartment full of unfinished canvases. "I can't abandon my art, my life here," she had said, tears in her eyes. "And you can't abandon your dreams." Blinded by ambition to expand Vaughn Tech, he flew to Silicon Valley without looking back, leaving only a note, "I'm sorry, but I have to do this." Now that decision returned like a painful echo. How hadn't he realized? Was Elizabeth pregnant when he left? Determined to face the truth, Alexander visited Dr. George Harrison, Elizabeth's doctor, introducing himself as a donor interested in funding lupus research. "The patient is responding slowly to treatment," Harrison explained, a man in his 50s with tired but kind eyes. "Experimental drugs are expensive and not covered by Social Security. For a single mother, that's additional stress, especially with 3 young daughters." The words, "single mother," echoed in Alexander like a hammer. "How are the girls?" he asked, trying to maintain composure. Harrison smiled. "They're a treasure, brave always, with their mother bringing drawings and stories to cheer her up." Alexander went out to the hospital garden, where oak trees cast shadows on stone benches. Through a window, he saw the triplets playing with an older woman, probably their aunt. Charlotte, in red, led a hopscotch game, drawing lines with chalk on the ground. Sophia, in blue, observed attentively, as if calculating patterns. Lily, in green, sang a children's song, her voice soft as a breeze. Every detail confirmed what he already knew: Charlotte had his grandmother. Rosalind's determined chin, Sophia, his own habit of analyzing before acting, and Lily, Elizabeth's expressive eyes full of life. The truth overwhelmed him. Those girls were his daughters, and he had missed their first steps, first words, first school days. Guilt consumed him, but also filled him with fierce urgency. He couldn't live as if they didn't exist. Determined, he sought Margaret Lewis, Elizabeth's aunt, a literature professor at New York University. He found her leaving a class in Midtown, her face marked by years of responsibility. "Mrs. Moore, I'm Lewis," Alexander said, his voice shakier than he admitted. "I think I'm the father of Elizabeth's triplets. We need to talk." Margaret, a 52-year-old woman with short hair and a piercing gaze, studied him as if she could see through him. "So you finally found out, Mr. Vaughn," she said coldly. "The great Alexander Vaughn, dream destroyer, has done his calculations." Her words cut like knives, but Alexander didn't flinch. "I didn't know anything," he said. "If I had, I would have come back." Margaret laughed, a bitter laugh, echoing in the ancient courtyard. "Really? Because Elizabeth called you twice when she found out she was pregnant. Your assistant said you were not available for personal matters." The revelation was a physical blow. Alexander remembered those months in Silicon Valley, 18-hour days, crucial negotiations, and his order to filter all non-business calls. "I never got those messages," he murmured, but Margaret didn't yield. "It doesn't matter now." Elizabeth decided a man who prioritized money over love didn't deserve to know about his daughters. The conversation dragged on, tense and loaded with years of resentments. Finally, Margaret pulled an old cardboard box from her car. "Elizabeth wrote these letters for you," she said, her voice tired. "She never sent them. Maybe they'll help you understand what you lost." That night in his penthouse, Alexander opened the box with trembling hands. The letters, in Elizabeth's familiar handwriting, were a diary of pain and love. The first dated 6 months after his departure. "The babies kicked today. There are 3, Alexander. I wonder if you'd care if you knew. Another, when the girls were 6 months. Charlotte rolled over today so determined like someone I knew. Sophia watches everything with serious eyes. Lily laughs at everything. They're perfect. The last from 2 years ago tore him apart. I saw your photo in a magazine. You look successful and happy. I'm glad I didn't send these letters. You built the life you wanted, and we built ours without you. While reading, Alexander received a call from John Ramirez. There's more, Mr. Vaughn, he said. Your assistant in Silicon Valley who blocked Elizabeth's calls received a $50,000 bribe from your sister Victoria Vaughn. She feared a family scandal would harm Vaughn Tech. Alexander felt cold anger. Victoria, his older sister, had always protected the company at any cost. She had monitored Elizabeth since then, ensuring no contact with Alexander. Now, with the triplets in the picture, Victoria was willing to do anything to keep them out of his life. Alexander hung up, looking at New York City's lights from his window. Elizabeth's letters, the girls' laughter, Charlotte's crossed arms gesture, everything confronted him with his past. But it also offered an opportunity, a chance for redemption he never imagined. Determined, he dialed Margaret. I want to meet my daughters, he said. I'll do whatever it takes. But he didn't know that Victoria from her office at Vaughn Tech was already planning her next move, one that would risk everything Alexander was about to build. Building connections. The evening light bathed the garden of Mount Sinai Hospital, tinting the stone benches with golden and pink hues. It was late September 2025, and New York City still vibrant after Labor Day prepared for fall. In Greenwich Village, cafes filled with students, street artists painted murals in squares, and the aroma of pretzels mixed with bagel bakeries. But in the hospital, time seemed frozen, trapped in the nurses' whispers and the monitor's hum. Alexander Vaughn, sitting on a garden bench, felt the weight of Elizabeth Moore's letters in his heart. Every word from the woman he loved had confronted him with his past, the decision to leave her for Vaughn Tech, the ambition that blinded him, and now the possibility that Charlotte, Sophia, and Lily, the 5-year-old triplets he met in the hallway, were his daughters. The revelation that his sister Victoria Vaughn had bribed his assistant to block Elizabeth's calls added a layer of betrayal that consumed him. Victoria, always protective of the family legacy, had kept Elizabeth and the girls out of his life to avoid a scandal. But Alexander couldn't ignore the truth anymore. After 2 weeks of tense negotiations with Margaret Lewis, the girls' aunt Alexander got permission to meet them, but with strict conditions. Only as a friend of their mother. Margaret warned, her eyes fierce under short hair. You won't tell them who you are until Elizabeth can decide. They've been through too much with her illness. Alexander accepted, though every fiber screamed to claim his daughters. The hospital garden with its oaks and fountains became the neutral ground for the meeting. Alexander arrived 15 minutes early, his hands sweating like a teenager on a first date. He carried a bag with small gifts, colored pencils for Charlotte, a book on constellations for Sophia, and a jazz sheet music for Lily. Not expensive gifts, but thoughtful based on what he observed in their brief encounter. When Margaret arrived with the triplets, his heart stopped. They wore vibrant colors again. Charlotte in red, Sophia in blue, Lily in green. Their identical faces were a miracle, but their expressions unique. Charlotte distrustful, leading, Sophia analytical, observing, Lily radiant, smiling. Girls, this is Mr. Vaughn, Margaret said carefully. He knew your mother in college. Charlotte stepped forward like a little diplomat. I'm Charlotte, she announced, studying him with suspicious eyes. This is Sophia, and that's Lily. Lily offered a shy smile, while Sophia tilted her head as if decoding a puzzle. It's a pleasure to meet you, Alexander said, kneeling to their level. Your mother told me about three very special girls. Charlotte narrowed her eyes. Mom never mentioned you. If you were friends, why don't we know about you? The question disarmed him, cutting through his rehearsed composure. Sometimes, he said slowly, adults take different paths and lose touch with important people, but that doesn't mean they stop caring. Sophia, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke. Why does Mom get sad when she sees families with dads? The innocence of the question hit him like a punch. Margaret intervened quickly. Sophia, enough for now. But Lily, with her innate sensitivity, studied Alexander's face. Why are your eyes sad like Mom's? She asked with frankness that left him breathless. Alexander felt his facade crumble. These weren't just children. They were his daughters, carrying pieces of his heart he never knew he'd lost. Sometimes, he whispered, adults make mistakes that hurt the ones we love most, and that makes us very sad. The meeting lasted barely half an hour, but every second was a treasure. Alexander gave them the gifts, observing their reactions. Charlotte took the pencils cautiously, but her eyes lit up at the vivid colors. Sophia opened the constellations book, flipping through it fascinated. Lily hugged the sheet music, humming a melody. You don't need to buy us things, Charlotte said, her tone firm. Mom says affection can't be bought. Alexander smiled, touched. It's not to buy affection. It's because I saw who you are. Charlotte draws to protect what she loves. Sophia asks to understand the world. Lily sings to make others happy. Margaret, watching from a bench, noted the immediate connection, but also the moment's fragility. That's all for today, she said, calling the girls. Lily, before leaving, gave Alexander a paper flower she had made. So you won't be sad, she said. Alexander pocketed it, feeling a lump in his throat as he watched them walk away, Charlotte leading Sophia, analyzing Lily singing. In the following weeks, Alexander established a cautious routine. Every afternoon after Vaughn Tech meetings, he arrived at the hospital with coffee for Margaret and small gestures for the girls, a notebook for Charlotte, a star map for Sophia, a toy flute for Lily. He learned their languages. Charlotte drew when worried. Sophia asked to calm her anxiety. Lily sang to express emotions. One afternoon, while sharing chocolate bread, Charlotte stared at him. Why do you keep coming? Is it just because Mom is sick? Alexander chose his words carefully. I come because I care about you. You're brave, smart, and you make me want to be a better person. Sophia, flipping her star map, asked, Did you know Mom when she painted star pictures? Alexander nodded, his voice soft. Yes, she painted sunrises that made everyone feel less alone. Lily, playing her flute, added, Mom says stars are stories the sky tells. Do you believe that? Alexander smiled. I believe your mom is right. But peace was fragile. Victoria Vaughn, from her Vaughn Tech office, learned of Alexander's visits. Furious, she confronted him in his penthouse. Are you crazy? Those girls aren't your responsibility, she said, her voice sharp. If you acknowledge them, it'll be a scandal. The press will destroy our company. When Alexander refused to back down, Victoria changed tactics. She hired a private detective to investigate Elizabeth, implying her illness made her unfit as a mother. If you continue, I'll sue for custody, she threatened. A workaholic bachelor isn't fit to raise 3 girls. Alexander, hurt by his sister's betrayal, reinforced his determination. They're my daughters, he said, and I'll do anything to protect them. But he didn't know Victoria had already contacted a lawyer, ready to use her influence to separate Alexander from the girls and maintain control of Vaughn Tech. The crisis and the promise fall. 2025 wrapped New York City in a tapestry of golden and ochre leaves, and Manhattan's streets shimmered under October's soft light. Stalls of apple pie filled squares with aromas of baked apples, hot sandwiches, and walnut donuts, while families gathered in Central Park, admiring fall leaves under clear skies. Children ran on Broadway, buying pumpkins for Halloween, and cathedral bells rang in Midtown announcing evening mass. But at Mount Sinai Hospital, the city's bustle faded, replaced by hurried footsteps on granite floors and the constant hum of medical monitors. Alexander Vaughn, 38 years old, had found a fragile balance with Charlotte, Sophia, and Lily. The 5-year-old triplets he now knew were his daughters. Every afternoon after long meetings at Vaughn Tech headquarters, he arrived at the hospital with small gestures, a drawing notebook for Charlotte, a constellations puzzle for Sophia, and a toy flute for Lily. The girls, initially distrustful, began to open up. Charlotte challenged him with direct questions like, "A little prosecutor." Sophia interrogated him about the universe, seeking logic in a chaotic world. Lily, with her sweet voice, offered songs that filled the air with hope. But the threat from his sister, Victoria Vaughn, hung like a dark cloud. Victoria, protective of Vaughn Tech's legacy, had hired a detective to discredit Elizabeth Moore, the girl's mother, and threatened to sue for custody, arguing Alexander, a workaholic bachelor, was unfit to be a father. One cold October morning, while Alexander shared hot chocolate with the girls in the hospital garden under the shadow of a century-old oak, Margaret Lewis, the triplets' aunt, called urgently. "Elizabeth has worsened," she said, her voice trembling, barely audible over the wind-rustling leaves. "Last night her kidneys failed due to lupus. She's in intensive care and doctors say she needs emergency surgery." Alexander felt the ground vanish beneath his feet, as if the entire city had stopped. "How are the girls?" he asked, his gaze fixed on the triplets, playing pat cake in a garden corner, their laughter contrasting the moment's gravity. "They're trying to be brave," Margaret replied, her eyes red. "But they're terrified. They haven't seen Elizabeth in 2 days." Alexander approached the girls kneeling on the gravel. Their colorful dresses, red, blue, and green, seemed a challenge to the hospital's gray, but their faces reflected a fear no child should know. "I know you're worried about Mom," he said gently, his voice warm but firm. Charlotte, with arms crossed in her protective gesture, stared at him. "Is she going to die?" she asked, her frankness cutting the air like a knife. Sophia, holding a medical brochure found in the waiting room, added, "I read that lupus can destroy kidneys. Is that why she's so sick?" Lily, clutching her flute with trembling hands, whispered, "I want to sing to Mom, but they won't let me in." Their words, full of childish pain, pierced Alexander, who fought back tears. "The doctors are doing everything possible," he said, seeking words that offered comfort without false promises. "Your mom is strong like you, and I'm here to take care of you no matter what happens." Charlotte, with heartbreaking determination, asked, "If Mom dies, who will take care of us? Will they take us to a place like kids without families?" The question hit him like lightning, revealing the terror the girls had kept silent. Alexander looked at their faces, each reflecting a different fear. Charlotte trying to control Sophia, seeking logic. Lily sinking into sadness. "Me," he said, his voice resounding with certainty he didn't know he had. "Because I'm your dad. I'll never leave you, not now or ever." The word dad echoed in the garden, a spontaneous acknowledgement that surprised even him. The girls looked at him, eyes wide with amazement. Sophia, always analytical, asked, "Are you really our dad? Why weren't you here before?" Alexander swallowed, feeling the weight of 6 years' absence. "I knew when I saw you in the hallway," he said, his voice breaking. "You have your mother's eyes, but also something of mine. Charlotte's strength, Sophia's curiosity, Lily's joy. I made a mistake not being here before, but I promise to make up for it." Lily, tears falling, threw herself into his arms, sobbing against his chest. Sophia, hesitant, approached, slowly touching his hand as if confirming he was real. Charlotte, still rigid, whispered, "If you're our dad, you can't leave again." "I won't leave," Alexander promised, hugging all three. "You're my family now." Margaret, watching from a bench, felt a mix of relief and caution. She knew this moment was a turning point, but Elizabeth's illness and Victoria's schemes could destroy everything. "Let's go inside," she said, her voice firm. "You need to rest." That afternoon, the crisis escalated. While Alexander was in a crucial meeting at Vaughn Tech, discussing a merger that could save the company from financial crisis, his phone vibrated with a message from Margaret. "Elizabeth is in surgery. Come now." He left the room without explanation, ignoring his team's protests, and rushed to the hospital, his heart pounding with terror no negotiation had caused. In the intensive care waiting room, he found the girls with Margaret, their faces pale under fluorescent lights. Charlotte sat rigid, fists clenched, as if controlling fate. Sophia read a kidney transplant brochure, seeking answers in science. Lily cried silently, hugging her flute, emitting weak notes when squeezed. "What happened?" Alexander asked, kneeling beside them. "Her kidneys collapsed from lupus," Margaret explained, her voice breaking. "The surgery is risky, and the next hours are critical." Charlotte's voice, trying to be strong, asked, "If Mom doesn't wake up, will you really keep us?" The question pierced him, revealing the depth of her fear. Alexander took their hands, looking at each. "I promise. You're my daughters, and this is your home with me no matter what." The following hours were an eternity. Alexander became their anchor, answering Sophia's questions about kidney function, telling Lily childhood stories from Brooklyn to calm her, and assuring Charlotte she didn't have to carry everything alone. He took the girls to the hospital cafeteria, sharing a plate of pretzels and orange juice, an attempt at normalcy amid chaos. When Lily spilled her juice and burst into tears, not for the accident, but accumulated fear, Alexander knelt, offering his handkerchief. "It's okay to cry for big things, Lily," he said. "The juice is just an excuse." Charlotte, watching, began to soften her guard, her eyes showing a spark of trust. At midnight, Dr. George Harrison appeared, his face exhausted but relieved. "The surgery was successful," he announced. "Elizabeth is stable, but the next 24 hours are crucial for recovery." Relief flooded the room, tempered by the moment's fragility. The girls, exhausted, curled against Alexander, who hugged them, feeling for the first time the weight and joy of being a father. "Mom will be fine," Sophia whispered, or to herself. Lily, squeezing her flute, said, "I'll sing when she wakes." Charlotte, relaxed for the first time, whispered, "Thanks for staying, Dad." But Victoria's threat hadn't vanished. The next day, while Alexander took the girls to school, his lawyer, Marta Rivera, called. "Victoria has filed a formal lawsuit," she said. "She argues you're unfit for custody, citing your bachelor life and work history. She's also investigating Elizabeth, implying her illness makes her unfit as a mother." Alexander felt icy fury. Victoria hadn't just blocked Elizabeth's calls years ago. Now she tried to snatch his daughters, to protect Von Tech's image. "I won't allow it," he replied. "Prepare a defense. These girls are my family." That night in the hospital chapel, Alexander lit a candle for God, praying for strength to protect Charlotte, Sophia, and Lily. As the flame flickered, he knew the battle for his family was just beginning, but also that, for the first time, he had something worth risking everything for: building a family. Winter settled in New York City and Greenwich Village, streets lit up with Christmas lights twinkling like stars in December 2025. Union Square markets bustled with nativity figurines, gingerbread cookies, and the sweet aroma of fresh-baked apple cider donuts. Families strolled Fifth Avenue wrapped in scarves, while children sang carols in squares. At Mount Sinai Hospital, Elizabeth Moore's recovery progressed slowly, each day bringing a bit more of the woman who filled canvases with Central Park sunrises. Charlotte, Sophia, and Lily, the 5-year-old triplets, began to see Alexander Vaughn not just as their mother's friend, but as a father who promised to stay. After Elizabeth's emergency surgery in October 2025, Alexander transformed his life. He abandoned his sterile penthouse on Fifth Avenue for a warm apartment in Greenwich Village, steps from the hospital and the girls' school. The walls, once bare, now covered with Charlotte's drawings, capturing New York City's light sunrises, Sophia's star maps, drawn with scientific precision, and Lily's sheet music, scribbled with children's song notes. Sundays became Bagel Sundays, a tradition the girls named with laughter. Alexander learned to make bagels perfectly round for Sophia, who demanded symmetry, flower-shaped for Lily, who loved beauty, and decorated with fresh cream cheese for Charlotte, whose artistic eye noted every detail. "Why are they different?" Sophia asked one morning, studying her plate with inquisitive eyes. "Because each of you is unique," Alexander replied, smiling as he toasted another bagel. "Why give you the same if you want different things?" Alexander immersed himself in the girls' worlds, learning their languages. Charlotte drew when worried, her pencils creating landscapes reflecting her unease. Sophia asked about planets and galaxies, seeking logic in a world where her mother was still ill. Lily sang to heal her voice, filling the apartment with joy, defying sadness. At the school's ballet recital, a tribute to Elizabeth Alexander brought a bouquet of roses, her favorite flowers. Charlotte danced with fierce strength, as if each step affirmed her resilience. Sophia moved with calculated precision, every gesture measured. Lily shone with pure joy, her smile lighting the stage. When Lily saw him in the audience, she waved spontaneously, breaking the choreography, and the audience burst into affectionate laughter. "You were magnificent," Alexander said, giving each a small bouquet. Charlotte, accepting hers, looked at him intensely. "Why do you care about us so much? Is it just because of Mom?" The question, direct as always, made him pause. Alexander knelt, meeting her gaze. "I started coming for your mother, but now I care because I know you. Charlotte, you're brave and protect what you love. Sophia, you're brilliant and see the world clearly. Lily, your joy makes everyone better. It's you and I won't stop being here." For the first time, Charlotte smiled, her distrust dissolving like fog under the sun. For Christmas, Alexander ordered silver bracelets from a midtown jeweler, each engraved with a message: "Your strength protects for Charlotte. Your curiosity illuminates for Sophia. Your joy heals for Lily." He gave them on Christmas Eve while decorating a tree in the apartment, placing figurines under God's watchful eye. "Why are they different?" Lily asked, twisting her bracelet to catch the light. "Because each shines in her own way," Alexander said. "Charlotte, reading her message, whispered, "Am I really strong?" Alexander nodded, touching her shoulder. "You're the strongest person I know, Charlotte. You've been caring for your sister since Mom got sick." Sophia, opening her locket, read, "Your curiosity illuminates." She looked at Alexander, surprised. "How did you know I want to be an astronomer?" "Because you always ask about the stars," he replied. Lily, hugging her bracelet, said, "Mine says I heal hearts. Do I do that?" "Every day," Alexander assured with every song. But Victoria's threat persisted. Her custody lawsuit advanced in courts, backed by reports questioning Elizabeth's health and Alexander's stability. Victoria gathered statements from Alexander's former colleagues, painting him as a workaholic, unable to raise 3 girls. She also implied Elizabeth, weakened by lupus, couldn't be an adequate mother. Alexander, with his lawyer, Marta Rivera, countered with evidence of Victoria's manipulation bank transfers proving the bribe to his Silicon Valley assistant and emails revealing her years-long surveillance of Elizabeth's life. "Victoria didn't just push me away from my family," Alexander said, his voice laden with fury. "She's tried to control everything for the company's sake." Alexander confronted Victoria in her Vaughn Tech office, a cold space overlooking Times Square. "Stop," he said, his voice like steel. "They're my daughters. If you continue this lawsuit, I'll expose every maneuver of yours, and you'll not only lose in court, but any remaining respect." Victoria, pale, tried to defend herself. "I did it for the company, for our legacy," she said. "Your legacy is money," Alexander replied. "Mine is Charlotte, Sophia, and Lily." Intimidated by the evidence and her brother's determination, Victoria signed an agreement to withdraw the lawsuit in exchange for keeping her position in the company, though Alexander cut all personal contact with her. On Christmas Eve, the makeshift family celebrated in the Greenwich Village apartment. Alexander and the girls decorated the tree, placing shepherds and wise men while eating gingerbread and hot cocoa. Lily sang Jingle Bells, and Charlotte drew a tree on paper including Alexander with the girls. Sophia, with her star map, pointed to a constellation. "It's like us," she said. 3 stars together, shining brighter because they're close." Alexander, hugging them, felt for the first time he had a true home. But he knew the future depended on Elizabeth, whose recovery was still uncertain, and his ability to build a family from the ashes of his past. The happy ending, spring 2027, bloomed in New York City, and Central Park's cherry trees perfumed the air with sweetness, announcing warm days. Greenwich Village streets vibrated with musicians playing jazz in squares, while cafes served burgers, apple pie, and cool lattes. In a modern house, with windows capturing the Atlantic's golden light, Elizabeth Moore, now recovered, painted a Central Park canvas, her brushstrokes full of life. Around her, Charlotte, Sophia, and Lily, her 7-year-old triplets, played in the garden, while Alexander Vaughn, the man who became their father, prepared burgers in the kitchen, laughing with the girls. The path to this moment had been long and full of trials. After Elizabeth's emergency surgery in October 2025, Alexander abandoned his distant entrepreneur life to become a dedicated father. He traded his Fifth Avenue penthouse for a warm Greenwich Village apartment where walls filled with drawings, star maps, and songs. On Elizabeth's 36th birthday in March 2026, the girls revealed they knew Alexander was their father. "We figured it out weeks ago," Sophia said, always the most logical. "You have our eyes." Elizabeth, facing him for the first time since recovery, admitted with a trembling voice, "I didn't tell you because I thought you were better off without us." I thought your world was too big to include us. Alexander, holding back tears, replied, My world was empty without you. I'm sorry for everything I lost, but I'm here now. Elizabeth's recovery was slow but steady. In summer 2026, the family moved to a house in Brooklyn, a refuge with a garden full of herbs for Elizabeth and a studio where her canvases captured sunrises and sunsets. Alexander, living nearby, became a full-time father, picking up from school, helping with homework, and preparing burgers on weekends, a recipe learned from his grandmother in Brooklyn. The girls called him Dad naturally, and he learned to navigate their worlds, Charlotte with her protective strength, Sophia with her inquisitive mind, Lily with her healing heart. On an April night while sharing apple pie under a starry sky, Charlotte reflected, We're not a normal family, right? We started backwards with babies and then dads. Elizabeth, sitting beside Alexander, smiled. The best families don't start normal. They choose to love each other every day, no matter how they began. Sophia, looking at the stars, added, Like a constellation. Each star different, but together they shine brighter. Lily, hugging her music box, said, Like sharing pretzels with Dad at the hospital. Alexander created the Charlotte, Sophia and Lily Foundation, dedicated to supporting orphaned children and those with chronic illnesses. Charlotte designed posters with her drawings. Sophia organized astronomy workshops, and Lily sang at charity events, her voice filling auditoriums with hope. The foundation became a beacon for families in crisis, and the girls, now 7, found purpose in helping others. I know what it's like to fear losing someone, Charlotte said at a workshop, but love always finds a way. The conflict with Victoria Vaughn resolved in winter 2026, after withdrawing her custody lawsuit, intimidated by evidence of her bribe and manipulation. Victoria distanced from the family. She sent a message through her lawyer, I hope they're happy. Alexander, reading it, felt relief, but also sadness for the sister who chose power over love. The detective Victoria hired confirmed Elizabeth had no documents related to Vaughn Tech business, closing the intrigue chapter. There was nothing to find, the detective said, just a mother who gave everything for her daughters. In October 2027, Alexander watched the girls prepare burgers in the Brooklyn kitchen, laughing while messing with meat and buns. Charlotte directed with precision, Sophia measured ingredients like a scientist, and Lily sang jazz to add flavor. Dad, we made dinner, Lily announced, holding a spoon proudly. Alexander, hugging them, felt his heart full. Family is choosing to love each other every day, Charlotte said, repeating her mother's words. Sophia added, like stars always there even if unseen. Lily, with a mischievous smile, and like sharing pretzels with Dad. That night, under a starry sky, the family gathered in the garden reading a Mark Twain story, while New York City's lights twinkled afar. Elizabeth, with an unfinished canvas beside her, looked at Alexander and the girls, grateful for a love reborn from ashes. Charlotte, Sophia, and Lily fell asleep on a swing, safe in a home full of laughter, songs, and kept promises. A chance encounter in a hospital had lit 3 lights that would illuminate New York City forever, a testament to the power of love that chooses to stay no matter past mistakes.